Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you all giving up your Thursday evening, turning up to listen to me. I just want to give you a little rundown of how this seminar has come about. This has been a pet project of mine for the last 18 months to a year. I noticed in myself that I wasn't always on top form when it came to training and nutrition, and a lot of it coincided with the different parts of my cycle. And to be honest, I wasn't really tracking. It was a lot of guesswork. When I became a mindset coach, I noticed the same things in some of the athletes that I coach, female athletes. So I decided to start tracking myself and them, and that's how this has come about. So the field for this is quite new, and it's getting deeper with data. There isn't an awful lot of meta-studies being done on the data at the minute, so I'm just going to share with you the things that I know so far. It is a work in progress, and this is just what I've learned. I hope we all learn something. Period power, harnessing the power of female physiology. Okay. I am absolutely bricking it. So okay. So I'm going to see it's not just women that have turned up, although it does affect us mainly. It is really important that if you are a male coach or if you coach female athletes, that you also understand. If you are not having the conversation with your female athletes about their cycle, you are missing a trick because you're not getting the best out of working with them. So trying to normalise this conversation is part of the effort being done here. Okay, so my name is Laura Salmon. I am a mindset coach. I'm also a member here. A lot of you will recognise me. A lot of you may not have met me before, so thank you for coming. I am a CrossFit coach. I am a personal trainer and a mindset coach. I've been a mindset coach for the last 18 months. I cover lots and lots of subjects. As I said, this bit is the hobby bit of it for me, but I do cover all kinds of subjects and I coach all kinds of athletes. Why are we here? Learning to harness the power of female physiology is one of the ways that we can hack our lives to make it easier, especially as athletes. Whether you do CrossFit or whether you do any other kind of sport, you are going to be impacted. Cycle tracking is really valuable, so we're going to explore the value that tracking the cycle can offer. Understanding the hormonal landscape, so I'm going to talk you through the whys and wherefores of how we travel through our cycle. We're going to touch on some of the dangers of ignoring our cycle, and we're going to touch on mindset and mood. Yeah, there's already some laughter. Just wait for it. Stages of the cycle, so I'm going to get granular and explain how it all works and why. We're going to look at synchronising nutrition for performance and recovery, a little bit of supplementation, some top tips in there. Understanding what happens to your cycle as you age, and how research is playing its part in all of this. Hormones! Our favourite thing. Who thinks that hormones are a blessing or a curse? Not necessarily a blessing, right? If we're all filled with testosterone like men, we'd be like, yeah, it's a blessing. Yeah, we don't. We get the rubbish hormones apparently, right? No. Our hormones all serve a purpose, but yes, it would be nice to have more testosterone. For the purposes of this talk, I'm just going to give you a little rundown on some of the terminology. So the main hormones that we're going to be dealing with and looking at are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. We do have testosterone, believe it or not an awful lot, but we do have it. The menstrual phases are follicular and luteal with an ovulatory blip in the middle. So we'll go into more detail about that. And when I talk about females, I am talking about biologically born females. If you identify as female, a lot of this may not necessarily be useful. So when I refer to a female, I'm talking about a biological female. Okay, menstruation. It's not a female issue. It's not a problem, but we're all impacted by it. So, for the sake of argument, the way that we're set up as a species to procreate, 50% of the world are female, right? So half of us, this happens to, and the other half are also affected by the fact that this happens to us. Yeah. So out of that 50%, 65% of women are fertile. So they are menstruators. That means that 35% of women are either premenstrual, meaning they haven't had their first period, or are postmenopausal, meaning they no longer have periods. So we either are, lucky us, or we know of a menstruator. That's a lovely term, isn't it? Yeah, sounds awesome. But it's more descriptive than some of the other ways you can put it. So we're brothers affected by sisters who have periods, boyfriends sent to the kitchen to get me something nice and always get it wrong. We're all affected. We have to suffer it, and everybody in the house has to suffer it with us. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay. The way that our cycle is set up, it's a changeable thing, and it runs on a calendar completely separate to any other calendar, which helps, because everybody's calendar is slightly different as well. So, I know sometimes it may seem like you sync up with other females because you spend a lot of time with them. I'm going to do a lot of myth busting tonight. That's a myth. That's a myth. And you'll find out why in just a second. So, a normal 24-hour period where we wake up in the morning, we are awake during the daylight, and we go to bed and sleep when it is dark. That is your circadian rhythm, so circadian cycle. That is what every human on the planet runs on. Women also have a second cycle. It's called an infraradiant cycle. For the sake of this presentation, we are going to use an average of 28 days. Anybody who's been on the hormonal pill will recognise that that is about what is in your packet. You get a 21-day pack of pills and a 7-day break, 28 days. Okay, so that's the average. You think? I'm here to bust another myth. Only 16% of menstruating women actually have an average cycle. The majority of people have either longer or shorter than 28 days. So unless you are on hormonal pill, it's unlikely that you're going to fall into that. That's why it's highly unlikely that you sync up with your pals because you spend a lot of time with them. What actually happens is a normal cycle is between 21 and 35 days long. That's pretty normal. So what you might find is you have a 24-day cycle, your friend has a 27-day cycle, and another friend has a 25-day cycle. And at certain points in the year, you're within a few days of each other, and then you kind of fall out of sync as it goes on because those days add up. You don't sync up. You know, don't try and convince me otherwise. Okay, so if you are under 40, you're likely to have shorter periods than the average 28 days. If you're over 40, they're going to get longer and further apart, and we'll discuss why later. Tracking. You're going to get sick of me talking about this by the end. Tracking. If there's one thing you take away from this presentation, it'll be please track. Please, please, please track your periods. You'll find out why. It's a source of power, for one. How do we know exactly how long our periods are? Or how do we know if they're changing? How do we know if we're having a healthy cycle or not, unless we actually track? We don't. It's guesswork a lot of the time. We go off feel, we go off approximations, we looked sort of roughly about 4 weeks ago, maybe. But everything is affected quite deeply by that cycle. So your physiology affects nutrition, training, concentration, coordination, sleep, recovery. Now, if you went to the doctor and said all of these things are being affected, they'd think you were really, really ill, right? We're not. It's just our hormones change and it affects everything. So if we're not tracking it, how do we know if we are ill or if it's just our hormones? We don't. So if we do track and we do take back some of that power, we're not going to be ambushed by our emotions as often because we're going to be able to look at historical data and forecast approximations of when we're likely to have those feelings come up. We're going to be able to fuel training efficiently because our body accesses different types of fuel at different points in the month differently. We'll be able to ensure adequate recovery because we'll be able to look after ourselves properly and make sure we're fueled and know when we need more sleep and know when we need more rest and when we can push hard and when we need to pull back. Who wants to be able to manage their food cravings a little bit more effectively? Yeah. Again, no longer need to sew our mouths shut. We'll be able to do that. So we'll be able to plan training and everything to do with it in accordance with our hormonal cycle as long as we have enough information to do so. Tracking. How do we do it? Okay, I've just told you it's really important. How do we track? There are a few ways. If anybody has come across Maisie Hill, we'll come on to her at the end. This is an example of something that she uses. Now, it looks weird and crazy. This is one way of tracking. It's a visual tracker. Now, you don't have to get all arts and crafts and crazy and like get out coloured pencils and start doing. If you like doing that kind of thing, you can do it. Enjoy yourself. You might as well make it fun. Other options are, if you're a bit of a data buff and you like collecting hard facts, use a spreadsheet. That is actually something really, really easy and simple to set up. Just use a spreadsheet. You can use a calendar, tried and tested method used by people for eons. Mark it on your calendar. This is when I've had my period. This is when I've had food craving. Just write a word on the day. Today I felt hollow. I felt sad. I cried a lot. I was full of energy, loads of ideas. 1 word a day, 2 words a day, just something that just sums up your day so that you can look back and think, okay, I was like this at this time last month, this is coming up this month. Lastly, develop apps. So there are so many out there, so many out there, okay? Choose the one which suits you best. These are a few of the ones which I have used and I currently use. So a couple of you follow me on Instagram with some sharing some of this stuff and have already downloaded the apps and started using it. High five, everyone. Okay, so I'll come on to why I just wanted to high five everybody shortly. But examples are Fitter Woman. If you are in the fitness industry, you will have heard the term Fitter. They provide software for personal trainers. They also have a tracking app for your cycle. I used that originally, and it was good, but it was very basic. I then was introduced to Flow Living, which is so good. It's more of a lifestyle app where you sync. It encourages you to sync your nutrition and your exercising, it refers to it, so it's not for me. I don't exercise, I train. So, but I think that's more for like a normal person. Not a right? But still, really useful, has its applications. Finally, the one I'm currently using is Wild AI. This is developed by scientists who are also sports people. They are female athletes. So this has been designed by athletes, for athletes. and it covers training, it covers tracking all of your symptoms, and it gives you really insightful advice and tips every month on things like rest, recovery, supplementation, and how to tailor your training. This app also gathers the data that you put into it and feeds it back to those scientists who are doing female-centered studies to hopefully re-educate everybody so we can get textbooks rewritten. Hooray! It's only about 70 years too late. Okay, what to track? If you are not using a developed app, try thinking about tracking things like your basal body temperature. So as soon as you wake up in the morning, electric thermometer in your mouth, sit there until it beeps. That is your basal body temperature. That is your core temperature before you've started doing anything. That is going to indicate when you ovulate if you track it properly. So if you are on the hormonal pill and you only have withdrawal bleeds and you don't have a true period, that is one way of tracking what point your hormones are actually at. So useful. You can track what your appetite's been like, whether you've had cravings, was your nutrition good, was it bad, was it average, what was your water intake like. Track your PMS symptoms. PMS symptoms are not restricted to just one point in the month. They can affect at any time that your hormones are in flux. So maybe worth tracking. Physical changes. Yes, we physically change. It's not our imagination. It is not our imagination. We retain more water. We become softer. Our body temperature goes up. Our ligaments actually soften at certain points in the month as well, which makes it more prone to injury. There's a whole host of things. Training mode and adaptations. If you have had an absolute shocker when you've come in to train, like I did the other morning, I had a right panic. Log it, because you never know, it might be specific to that particular part of your cycle. So you know you're probably not going to want to go and run 2 miles in a workout that day if you feel dead heavy. It's all right. Anything else that you feel is useful as well? Anything else? More data, the better. Warning! Okay, I've already alluded to the fact that you can still track your ovulation points if you are on the hormonal pill. This is basically to explain to you that nobody is immune from hormonal fluctuations. If you have a womb and ovaries, if they're still inside you, you are going to have hormonal fluctuations. When you take the pill, or you have the injection or something like that, the only hormone in your body that is affected by that is that particular hormone that is being put into your body. It doesn't block anything, it doesn't stop anything, it may suppress ovulation itself, it doesn't suppress the actual hormones around it. What it might suppress is the luteinizing hormone that releases the follicle, that's it. Sometimes it might thin the lining. It doesn't stop your hormones working. What can happen in some cases is you end up with excess hormone, which causes a whole host of problems all of its own. Just something to opt out. But I'm not saying don't try hormonal contraception. Don't go home and chuck it in the bin, everybody. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want people coming to me going, look, Laura, you said. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is be smart. If you feel like you want to know more, go find out more. If you've ever emptied your pill packet and taken out that booklet, it's a booklet, right? It's about this thick. And if you've read through that, half of it is side effects. It's pretty terrifying. But the doctor doesn't tell you any of these when you go in there and you've just got really heavy periods and cramps in your boobs hurt. He's like, here, have these pills. He doesn't say, it might give you, really bad anxiety. You might end up depressed. And it doesn't tell you any of those things. So just be educated is what I'm saying. Go and learn as much as you can. Don't blindly take it just because a health professional said, take this, it's good for you. it'll stop this, because it always has side effects elsewhere. Okay, that's enough of that lecture. You can all carry on. Okay, touching on a little bit of a tough subject now. If you work in sport or any kind of coaching facility, you will have been told about this, or briefly, so I'm going to just touch it briefly. Red X, also known as the female athlete Triad, it's relative energy deficiency in sport. So the official descriptor for this is the body not taking in enough energy to meet demands placed in it by the amount of exercise performed. Okay, so basically it means your body is working far too hard for what you're putting in it. You need to give it more. That's the long and short of it. There's a lot of things that make it up. It can be a bit of overtraining, a little bit of undereating. It can be a little bit of under-recovery. It can be coming back from illness too soon. It can be all sorts of things caused by all sorts of things. But the warning signs of it are fatigue, extreme fatigue quite often, sudden weight loss or prolonged weight loss, absence of periods or irregular periods. That is called amenorrhea, and it is very, very common in sport, especially in high-level sport and especially in CrossFit at the moment. There has been so many fairly decent level athletes in the UK, people who have competed at regionals, who have come out in the last year publicly with stories and shared them very kindly to their Instagrams of their journey, having had amenorrhea and trying to restore their hormonal balance and actually get periods again. The danger of amenorrhea is not only can it lead to infertility, it reduces your bone density. So in later life, it means that you're more prone to osteoporosis. So you're going to go outside when you're old, and then slip your shoes on, break your hip. That's what that's for. It just makes you more prone to injury. So if you are a runner, you are going to get fractures, repeated fractures. And this isn't just a horror story. I know a couple of people who have competed at high levels in running, swimming and rowing throughout their teens and early 20s. They're now in their early 50s and late 40s, and they are suffering with repeated bone fractures. And there's not a lot that can be done to try and restore it at that age. So look after yourselves. Just look after yourselves now. Okay, this is the stuff everybody came for. This is the stuff. Mindset versus mood. Okay, so is there a difference? Is there a difference between mindset and mood? There's a couple of nods. Yes, yeah. Okay. Mindset can be trained. Okay? Mindset is something that we can practice. It's like a muscle. We can flex it. Mood, however, is pretty much hormonally driven, and it's run by the little monkey inside of it. Okay, so mindset is not mood, but mood can seriously affect your mindset. So this is why we need to keep an eye on the two. Okay, for all good intents and purposes, you may come in first thing in the morning and be like, yeah, and then your mood's like, no. Yeah, we've all had it, right? Okay. So emotional reactivity is inhibited by hormonal change. So most of the time, we can, in certain parts of our cycle, rein in the mood. Or we don't notice that we've got any kind of mood other than a really good one, right? And then all of a sudden, we can't keep track of our mood. And this is what we want to try and get to the root of. So, as we go through this next phase of this presentation, you'll understand why these things happen, be able to look out for them, and hopefully be able to catch them. And I'm going to mention tracking again. Yeah. By the end of this, you'll be like, I'm going to track. Okay, so a little word about women mindset. Premenstrual syndrome, PMS, is a very real thing. That really, really magnifies everything in your life, right? It's like holding a huge magnifying glass over a worm in the sun. That's what it's like having PMS. So if you have any issues, problems, things that are on your mind, in the first part of your cycle, you can probably gloss over them a little bit. It's not that bad. And then in the second part of your cycle, oh yeah, it's bad. So hopefully, if we can navigate our way through it, we can learn when the times are to deal with issues, tackle problems, go headlong into projects, plan things according to how we need to expect our brain to respond at the time. Who's this guy? Who has been this guy? That's what I'm asking. Yeah. Okay. We've all, well, few of you might not know, but you've been subjected. Yeah. Oh, he's pointing at you, Charlie. We've all been subjected at some point to this guy taking over. This is when you get sent to the shop, looking at you, sent to the shop, poor Chris, sent to the shop, get me something nice. And he's like, in Tesco, in the fridge, like, does she want something cakey, biscuity, rules, and then he stuff, and they're just like, oh no! And then it gets So, 7 to 11 days-ish before our period starts, our menstruation actually starts. This is when this is most prevalent. Our emotional regulation is vastly reduced in that 7 to 11 days. We can all feel it coming, creeping up slowly, and it eats away at our willpower until there's none left. Yeah. So it does heavily influence our ability to commit to diet and training. Because you eat bad, you don't feel like training, or you try to punish yourself with training for eating bad. Neither are a good place to be, right? So we need to be adaptable and flexible, and we also need to have a bit of self-compassion and understand that it's normal. It's normal, and you'll find out why. So the first half in the follicular, this guy's at bay. Second half in the luteal, running rampant. So, in the first half, yeah, we can all relate. This is when we are bleeding. This is our period. We feel a little bit heavy, a little bit slow, like we're carrying everything around with us. It doesn't feel like that for everybody, but the general consensus is we're slow, sluggish, a little bit fatigued. Mental cognition isn't its best, a little bit of brain fog, maybe hormonal headaches, who knows, all builds up. Yeah. This phase, this is the fire phase. This is the bit where, we look good, we dropped all that water weight that we're carrying around in the first few days. Yeah. Estrogen is on the rise. So estrogen is the Beyonce hormone through and through. So as she's strutting about, we are focused, we are driven, we're on fire, we want to tackle everything, we can train hard, our appetite is naturally suppressed a little bit, we want to eat salad. This is the bit where we want to eat salad. Yeah, we don't mind it. We can be social, really creative. This is like the party. This is where we are at our best. We make so many plans, fill our diary up, we're on it. Okay? This is the point in my cycle where most of my PBs come from. I know because I tracked it. See what I did there? Yeah. Estrogen at this point is at its peak. This is when we are ovulating. It's only a 2-day period, only a tiny, tiny little bit of testosterone that pops out at this point. Most of it, it's all we're getting. Sad. At this point, this is when basal body temperature tracking comes into its own. At this point, over the course of this 2 days-ish, your body temperature will increase 0.3 to 0.6 degrees. Doesn't seem like an awful lot, but we are burning hot. That's why, at the beginning of our cycle, we have an argument over the heating. It's cold! Now it's too hot. Your appetite naturally starts to peak a little bit here. Your recovery starts being a little bit diminished, but there are advantages to this point in your cycle. Unfortunately, your hormones are starting to play with your emotional regulation. So for the last 5 to 7 days of your cycle, this shouty woman, this is a phase that we all recognise. And when you say to anybody, we're going to talk about women's cycles, this is what everybody thinks we're going to talk about, this angry shouting.
0 calorie carbs in the
So the luteal phase, towards the end, this woman pops out, but it's quite a long phase that we have. It's the entire other half of our cycle. So if we felt fantastic in the first half of our cycle, we were all like on fire, life's a party, this is the hangover. This is when we have to get up and clean up after the party. This is when we look at our social calendar and go, oh God, why did I arrange to do that? We felt like it 10 days ago. We don't feel like it now. No. So, as estrogen has peaked, it's now on its way down. Progesterone is starting to rise and then drops off at the end. Our appetite is now vastly increased. As I mentioned, our basal body temperature has already been raised and we are running hotter. Now, we all get cravings at this point and we all are really quick to reach for a chocolate bar, a bag of crisps. They're about 100, 120 calories maybe, 140 calories each, depending on how many we eat. During this phase of our cycle, we actually really physically require 90 to 120 calories more per day because of all the changes that are happening inside of us and because we're burning slightly hotter. So don't feel bad. You can eat it, just don't eat all of them. So in the last 5 to 7 days, this woman's come out because estrogen's completely dropped off to its baseline level and progesterone is now also dropping off. That's when Pms symptoms really start to ramp up. It's all fun, right? This is where we get into like the granular stuff. So we're going to look at like food, diet, nutrition, and hacking, tweaking it all, try to get it to work for us. So this basically explains, not in the best way, but it's a good visual representation of how our cycle affects what we do and the requirements that we have. So in the first 7 days, we have lower calorie needs, but that's fine because we are naturally less likely to eat as much because Beyonce wants to be skinny, right? We could do with higher quality carbs at this point. You know, we've eaten all the chocolate in that 7 days before this, so let's eat some greens and whatnot. Omega-3s, iron, vitamin C. Get some more of them. Strength-based training, go for it. What I will say is the whole of this is trying to encourage you to eat better and focus on leafy greens, making sure you get enough healthy fats into your diet, topping up your omega-3s to reduce inflammation, because the more processed foods we eat, the more our bodies are inflamed, the more that affects our hormones. This bit made me laugh. It's a little yoga woman, because in that last part of our period, apparently the rest of the world thinks we can only do yoga. We want to just do deep breathing and yoga. I don't agree with that. But what I do agree with is not try to train the same as you were when you were smashed it out the park. Okay, so what I will say is food supplementation is far better than actual supplementation. If you can get all of your nutrients and extra supplements from food, please eat the food. It's better to eat it than get it out of the bottle. So if you need omega-3s, seafood, fish, nuts and seeds, and I don't mean like peanut butter, as much as I like it, it makes sense. Iron, lean red meat. There are so many benefits to eating lean red meat. It comes with so much more nutritional benefit than any kind of supplementation, and vegan diets really lack in all of the good stuff that can come from red meat as well. So if you are a vegan, you really do need to look at supplementing on this. But you can also get it from dark leafy greens, beans and dried fruit. That sounds like a right diet, doesn't it? Ooh. Fats, we all know what healthy fats are. Everybody's gone nuts over healthy fats this past few years. So avocados, salmon, mackerel, nuts, seeds, eggs, best stuff in the world. Eggs. High tryptophan foods. So around the end of our cycle, we really need tryptophan, which is an essential amino acid. The more we have of that, the better. It's one of the things that our body needs to access and can't access readily. So we need to really focus on that. And that will help ease a lot of PMS symptoms. Tryptophan can be found in chicken, turkey, pork, eggs, oatmeal, tofu, fish, nuts, seeds. If you eat a healthy diet, meaning eat the rainbow and a good variety of food, you're probably not going to be far off the mark, so you're not going to need to supplement an awful lot. If you don't know what you're doing, just try and eat as wide a variety as you can. If you really want to know what to do, get in touch with a good nutritionalist. There are plenty of nutritionalists out there who are in this field, who want to work with you, who want to help you, who are specific for female athletes, especially if you are looking to do this kind of thing and sync to your cycle. Okay, women are not small men. We require a lot of the things that men require, but we also require different things. So I'm going to touch on some of the nutritional things that are very obvious, but I'm going to try and get you to look at a different reason as to why we should eat. Everybody knows we should eat fibre. It's good to have a healthy microbiome. Okay. One of the really good reasons to eat plenty of fibre and a nice high fibre diet, a range of good fibre, is it helps move excess hormones out of the body. If you have a low fibre diet, it's likely that you have excess hormones floating around inside your body. That's not good. It's not good. They turn into free radicals, which can be poisonous and cause a negative feedback loop and damage your endocrine system. So just eat more fibre. Just eat the leafy stuff. Drink it if you have to. Healthy microbiome also connects the two brains together. So science now proves our gut is a second brain because it has so many nerve endings and it transmits directly into our brain and it affects mood. Okay, so when we feed it chocolate and crisps, oh, it wasn't yours. Okay. Yeah, so when we feed our gut chocolate and crisps and all that good tasting stuff, it doesn't actually help our microbiome. It fills it up and feeds it, but it feeds the wrong type of gut bacteria. What we want is the good gut bacteria that helps fight depression and anxiety, and that comes from eating things like pickled food. Fermented foods are a great prebiotic and probiotic and can really help reduce premenstrual symptoms. So kombucha, sauerkraut, gherkins count, yes. If it's pickled, get it eaten. But that is so much better than taking a probiotic tablet, because we don't know how much of that actually makes it through your digestive system and into your gut, because obviously it starts being digested in the mouth. We all know that about biology. By the time it gets into our gut, so little of it actually exists, you may actually be wasting your money for taking a probiotic supplement. You're far better trying to eat as widely as you can and develop your gut yourself. Okay, so as I said, women are not small men. Those are just a few of the reasons why it's more important for us to eat widely and eat well. Stacey Sims, as I have sort of mentioned earlier, Wild AI app was developed by a scientist and spokespeople. One of those is Dr. Stacey Sims. Stacey Sims changed the way that I view training and nutrition a few years ago. I was recommended to read her book, Raw. And Stacey Sims is an ex-triathlete. She has done several Ironmans. She is a PhD in sports science and female studies, and she is one of the leaders in the field in researching this topic. So every time you're feeling anything on the Wild AI app, you're basically giving it back to this woman who's trying to change the way that the world operates for women's health. Her TED Talk, if you've not seen her, get on and watch her TED Talk. It's great, and it will hopefully turn you on to some of her teachings and maybe even her podcast. There's another woman as well that I would recommend for further reading if you're interested, and that's Maisie Hill. I mentioned her at the beginning. You saw her little diagram. She has a few books out: Period Power, There Will Be Blood, and Perimenopause Power. So yeah, I kind of stole her title to it because I thought it was cool. And again, she comes at it from a different vantage point. It's more lifestyle for her, but it's good to read widely and understand all the different elements and areas. Lastly, Alyssa Vitti. She pioneered the whole cycle syncing process, and she is the brain behind Flow Living and the Flow app, the cycle tracking app. So she is one of the sources that I've used to gather as much information as possible on how to make the adjustments to be able to sync different elements of training and nutrition to your cycle. So what all those have in common is tracking. So please track. Okay, hacks, specific hacks. Adjusting physiology starts with tracking so that we can do this. The early follicular phase, which is your period, moderate to high intensity strength training as can be tolerated. If you want to train and you want to train hard, go do it. If you're on your period and you feel like shit, don't bother. Or just take it back a little bit. Focus on something else. Don't push yourself to do anything you want to do. Nutrition, baseline carbs, high protein, and increased fluids. Focus on lean red meat, leafy greens, veg, beans, pulses, whole grains, iron, vitamins B and C.
Is it true that you're stronger than the rest of the month, or is that a myth because you're just weak for the rest of it?
Not necessarily. You can be stronger. As your estrogen starts to peak, you can actually feel stronger. It's not necessarily that you are physically stronger, but it's more of your mental cognition starts picking up and you are able to tolerate the difficulty a lot easier. Your perception of suffering and difficulty actually decreases at this point, all the way up to ovulation. So, as I said, between day 1 and day 14 is when I get most of my PVs, and that's exactly why. Mid-follicular, moderate to high intensity strength or endurance-based training. You've got great levels of motivation, decreased stress and anxiety. Your immunity is now probably at its best that it's going to be throughout your entire cycle. So this is the bit where you can really push hard, you can really recover well. If you suffer from hormonal headaches or migraines, magnesium is a really good supplement to be taking at this point. You can take it throughout the cycle if you suffer. Try and focus on eating a lot of salmon, sardines, and mushrooms for vitamin D. I will make a little segue on vitamin D here. In the UK, we don't get enough vitamin D. Even in summer, we do not get enough vitamin D. Humans should be outside in the sunshine with most of our body exposed to sunshine for at least an hour a day to be able to absorb enough vitamin D. Most of us don't do that in the peak of summer, let alone in winter. So vitamin D really affects mood and it affects sleep. If you don't have enough vitamin D, your body just doesn't function the same. So unfortunately, we can't get vitamin D the way we should, so we have to supplement in some way. You can do it through food, but it's not the same type of vitamin D. There are 2 types of vitamin D. This one will help, but really, this is one of the cases where I'm going to say you have to supplement with a tablet. Ovulation. That is a woo. It's not just a weirdo with boxing gloves on. I couldn't find a good image of it. If you try Googling a woo, some of those images are terrifying. Okay, high intensity, low volume strength-based training. This is the point where that tiny little blip that we have of testosterone really helps the estrogen, the peak of estrogen, and we actually can get anabolic stimulus. So if you want to lift heavy and try and build real muscle, do it now. This is the time. Full sendings. You're also at great risk of injury. I did kind of mention this earlier. At this point in the cycle, as the luteinizing hormone helps the egg release from the follicle, it affects, new research is coming out to say that it affects your ligaments and tendons. It can soften them ever so slightly. That research has come about from a meta-study done in the US, where they focused on collegiate sport, and they found that women in impact sport suffered more ACL injury at this point in their cycle than at any other time. So just be careful. Increase your simple carbs pre-training. If you're going to be doing full sendies and you're going to be working out for any length of time, you need carbs. You need to be eating carbs. If you're going to be training for over 60 minutes, so if you're doing a double session, think about having intra-carbs or have a banana in between, something, anything, try and get as many carbs in around training as possible. Simple carbs, this is the best time to have your treats. So if you're going to have a cheat meal, have it after training. That's the best time. Your immune system is actually starting to lower at this point as well. So this is the time that if you were to get pregnant, The reason why it's all happening is because your immune system's turned down. Your immune system is programmed to attack foreign bodies. But it doesn't work if you're trying to have a baby and your immune system's trying to get rid of it. So it turns itself down. It's like a clever thing that we've developed over the years. So just be careful because your immune system is starting to reduce. You can push, but just be aware that you have to recover as well. Okay, mid-luteal. Again, we're on the way down now. This is the journey towards the end, the sad bit. So we're going to be lowering training intensity. Train with intensity for as long as you can, but be aware that you are probably going to get to a stage where that intensity is going to need to come down. If you want to do longer steady state stuff, brilliant. Knock yourself out. But as far as high intensity stuff goes, you may have to reconsider. Use your warm-up wisely. Try and gauge how you feel. Leucine-rich protein should be consumed as soon as possible after training. If you don't have a post-workout shake, I would recommend doing it because that is the quickest and easiest way to get leucine into your body. Get a really good high-quality protein, have a post-workout shake, that's that bit nailed. At this point, you should be focusing on having lots of squash, sweet potato, kale, and spinach that are rich in antioxidants to try and help flush out those excess hormones. Cold water immersion, it's a funny one, is this? Highly recommended, but at this time of year in the UK, you probably don't need it. Maybe not. In summer, however, when it's redders, or if you're abroad in a foreign country, training somewhere really hot, this is important. Men are vasoconstrictors. As soon as they get hot and your blood rushes to your surface, that's why we sweat, we try to cool our body down. As soon as you finish working out, a man will vasoconstrict quite quickly, meaning his blood will be taken away from the surface of his skin and pulled back into the organs and muscles. Women, however, we're not so good. And it stays for a while, which is why we're all red-faced for a lot longer. Yeah, so at the end of a workout, if you do suffer from any kind of heat exhaustion or you're prone to running extremely hot, at this point, get a cold shower. All you need is like a quick 30 seconds in there. Even if it's just a case of running your head under the shower, or worst comes to the worst, you don't have access, just put a really cold bottle of water on the back of your neck. That will help. Just look after yourself. I say this because if your immune system is already low and you're overheating, it's not a good recipe. Poor mood and mental fatigue are likely. We all know that, we know. So focus on getting good quality BCAAs in, vitamin D. If you want to supplement with B6 at this point, this will really help with PMS symptoms. There's lots of foods, leafy green veg, really colourful vegetables like peppers, so they're full of B6. You can just get a supplement because it's only for a few days of the month. It might be the faster way to do it. Okay, late luteal. On the sofa. With the feeling sad. Okay, low to moderate intensity. Right, at this point in the cycle, we all know we're just going to do what we're going to do, right? We're going to do what we're capable of doing and don't argue with me. Try and focus, if you can, on technical stuff. So Olympic lifting technique is ideal at this time. Try and keep your protein high pre-training. So this is just a continuation of what's happened in the last slide. We just want to keep up with the good work. Make sure you keep it up with your intra-training carbs. Make sure that you're having plenty of protein and all of your simple carbs around training. Try and look at getting in your starchy carbs as well. That'll help with the appetite control. Focus on good sleep hygiene. At this point of the month, if you are on a diet, good luck. No, jokes aside. Caloric restriction at this point in your cycle is going to spark scarcity mindset. You're going to feel like you are lacking in almost everything. Okay? At night time, if you go to bed and you are hungry, This is the time that your sleep is going to be most disturbed by that. So you're going to have a bad night's sleep, you're going to wake up the next day already hungry and in a bad mood. You can see where that's going. So after 3 or 4 days, Cookie Monster's coming back. Your immunity is probably going to be its lowest. You maybe feel anxious, stressed. It's all coming to a head at this point. Really keep up your omega-3s. Use the magnesium if you're suffering with headaches. Use zinc. Get some baby aspirin in for any bodily aches and pains you might have. Keep up with it. Okay, those are just a few little hacks for your cycle. I just want to mention what happens as we get older. So, perimenopause is the lead up to menopause. So, menopause is one day, exactly 12 months after your last period. It's just one day. And then that's it. Used to nobody. Get out. But that period before, perimenopause, can be between 9 and 12 years. Hurrah! What a joy! So no sooner we got used to what our cycle's doing, it decided it's not going to do that anymore, it's going to do what it wants. I discovered this myself. I discovered through tracking myself that I am actually in the early stages of perimenopause. Great. So that makes tracking even more important than ever for me, because my cycles can be at the moment anywhere between 17 days and 90 days. Yeah. And for that 90 days, to be fair, for about 30 of them, I felt like I was in the last week. I was sick of everyone's shit. So what I'm discovering and what the research is showing, that as you enter perimenopause and you head towards menopause, you actually become more carb sensitive. So those simple carbs that we all love actually really don't sit well, and you start to struggle with them. The closer you get to menopause, the more likely it is that you're going to have to switch those out for lower glycemic foods. So less wine and chocolate, more sweet potatoes and kale, less joy. More sadness. Jokes. So at this point as well, when you get into menopause, training and nutrition in accordance with sync with your cycle is probably not going to be that effective, but you're going to be in enough of a good habit by then that you're just going to continue on with all the great stuff and leave all the bad stuff behind. So you're not meant to suffer, you're not meant to feel miserable constantly, you're not meant to be ambushed every month by feelings and cravings and an inability to do what you expect to be able to do. You shouldn't be being ambushed by different elements of your cycle. You should be able to predict that today I'm going to come in and I'm going to be able to snatch, but next week I'm not going to be able to snatch and I'm going to whip myself with double unders, so maybe I'll get that work out of it. Just track and help yourself, and try and use some of this if you can, because I feel like the more that we know and the more power we have, the more pleasant we are to live with and work with and train with. And I will say, if you are being trained by a coach or you are coaching any women, please follow the lines of communication. If you are tracking, that is one of the ideal ways to start a conversation with your coach. And if you are a coach and you ask your athletes to track, that's showing an interest in making sure that you are getting the best out of them and you have their best interests at heart. So you can normalise this conversation through simply introducing that, asking for some advice and trying to understand where people are. So thank you very much. I'm willing to answer any questions you now have, if you have any. Okay.
Is it true? must be the late part of the cycle, sadly. But if you push too hard in training, that will cause you to store fat more easily.
Now, that is a really good point. So, that actually links in with, you're talking, sorry, so the question is, if you push too hard in training in the latter part of your cycle, in the luteal phase, could the stress of it trigger fat storage? And that's a kind of yes-ish answer. It is to do with stress, but it's to do with cortisol production. So it depends on the intensity of the training and how you actually perceive that intensity. So studies show intermittent fasting is really prone to triggering this in women. Intermittent fasting, so the story is, when medical studies are done, and human trials are done, they select a bunch of people, and what they found in the 50s and 60s was when they took a mixed group of men and women, and they had women of all ages, menstrual age women, that the results were skewed so badly by the women because they became unpredictable because of their cycle. They just removed women from the studies. So the only, safe, right? So studies for the longest time were going on men and postmenopausal women. So when you are prescribed medication that's been around for like the past 40, 50 years, just remember that that's been tested on men and postmenopausal women, not menstrual age women. So it's kind of a little science experiment every time you try it. So intermittent fasting is one of those studies that it's been done so much. Intermittent fasting is a very normal thing. We go to bed at night, we sleep for 8 hours, we don't eat anything when we're asleep. That is a fast, right? The trend is to elongate that window to like 16 hours plus. Sometimes it can be 2 or 3 days. Men respond really, really well to these studies. That is a great form of diet control for men. Women, however, recent research has shown that women respond to it in the short term very well, so you can use it for a short period, but long periods of use of intermittent fasting for more than 6 weeks triggers cortisol production, which triggers fat storage, which can trigger all kinds of negative feedback. Excess fat storage can affect your thyroid. It can also affect fertility. It puts you into a permanent cycle of starvation from fat storage. That's down to cortisol. That's down to stress. So if you are highly stressed at all, if you are in a really stressful environment, your body is more likely to store fat. If you train too hard, yes, prolonged training. So if you are training for an Ironman in that last period, that last couple of weeks, and you're pushing as hard as you possibly can, yes, it probably will trigger fat storage. But if you're only doing 1 or 2 sessions, really high intensity, it's probably not going to be, you're not going to put on like 6 pounds of fat in like 2 weeks. That's probably all the more pieces.
Do I intermittent fast every day? Would I be better to intermittent fast the first half of my cycle and then stop doing that the second half?
Yes. So yeah, the question was, if you intermittent fast, when is it a good time to do it? If you do it for the first half of your cycle, over a short period, when your appetite is suppressed, ideal. And then when you need the extra calories, give your body a little rest, don't intermittent fast then. Don't restrict your calories, don't go to bed hungry. Okay. Any other questions?
So if, for example, like working with females and having them coming in to sessions at the minute where we might have a prescribed workout for the day, and if they're aware, if they are tracking and they're aware of what they're doing, but the prescribed intensity maybe doesn't match up with what phase they're in,
Yep.
how would you then go about maybe amending like what you do for that individual on that day?
Okay, so hopefully, if they have been tracking for long enough, and they're willing to share that information with you, all you need is like 2 or 3 months worth of data.
Yeah.
You'll be able to hopefully accurately predict, okay, this week we can push really hard, this week, so you'll know well in advance. It hopefully isn't going to be
Like a
an on the day,
Okay.
I don't feel great today. You may well still get those days, but at least you'll be able to predict it, so you'll be able to do workarounds in advance. If it is a case of they turn up and it's, I'll give it a go, and then it all falls to bits, it's just, what would you normally do if you were faced with that? You just on the spot tailor it. But hopefully, if they're willing to share their tracking with you over a long enough timeline, you'll be able to predict it.
In 2 to 3 months of data.
Yeah. So the sooner everybody starts tracking with that, I'm going to keep saying it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What about for your ladies with things like polycystic ovaries or where their cycles are not normally for that? Or things like having a coil fitted where they've got a hormone in it which could then disrupt it in irregular time. So, you know, and you're measuring and I mean, what can you do to eat appropriately to your body to make sure that you're exercising appropriately?
Okay, so the question is, if you have medical intervention or a medical condition that affects your cycle, how do we adjust for that? Again, still track. I would advise basal body temperature will give you a good idea of roughly where you are in your cycle. The cycles may be very different in length and occurrence, but then you will still be able to get a rough idea using basal body temperature as your marker. That will be your starting point to be able to set your cycle from that. What I would say as far as nutrition goes, especially for things like polycystic ovaries or anything medical, seek out a nutritionalist. There are plenty of good female nutritionalists around who work specifically with these issues. I think if you want to take it seriously and you have any issues like that, just having somebody on your side who has seen it before and has advised somebody else through their experience, they're probably going to be able to give you a lot more value than I can in just this presentation. But the other thing that you can do is, in that scenario, I would say use that flow living app, because that's more of a lifestyle app. I know that she has spent quite a lot of time dedicated to studying polycystic ovaries and irregular cycles. So that app is probably going to help a bit more there. Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got one. I don't know whether you'll have a definite answer to it, but your opinion maybe on what you think. Like, so if you've got obviously different suggestions on how hard to train at certain points in the cycle, how do you then go against the battle of, well, by missing this session or changing the session or not hitting these numbers, I'm then not going to get the goal that I want, that I'm working towards, if that's then happening, like, say like, well, at a certain period of time, once a month, I'm always going to be dropping my training. How do you then how would you deal with, well, doing that because that's better for my body, but then that's not helping me in my head to get what I need to get out from training to hit my goals?
Okay, so that sounds like a mindset problem rather than an actual physical goal problem.
Yeah.
So that is something that I would probably say the goals that you have set, if you're wanting to pursue them so hard and that is your one sole focus, this isn't gospel. You don't have to completely reduce your training. If you feel good and you want to push and you want to go hard, that's absolutely fine, but prioritize things like recovery and nutrition. And really, at those points in the month where you are concerned that maybe missing sessions or reducing the intensity of sessions is going to have a negative effect further down the line, that's probably at the time when you probably need to start looking into the mindset aspects of it as to why you feel like that. What kind of attachment you have to the outcome, which is affecting the way you're feeling. But that's an entirely different seminar.
Just linked to that, at those points where maybe training should be backed off, is there actually an argument of reducing your loading is still relative to what you would be doing at a point where you'd be higher, like more ready to train? Does that make sense? So like training readiness comes down. If you were supposed to be working at 90%, actually working at 85% is still relative to that 90%.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say reducing training intensity, it's relative. So it should be relative intensity to you. So that's why it made me laugh when I pulled up that graphic. There's that picture of the woman doing yoga. Like, we can do more than that. We don't have to like completely back off. But yeah.
So then would
relative.
like RPE still be relative?
Yeah,
on that?
if you're expecting like a 7 to 8 RPE, you still expect a 7 to 8 RPE. It might just mean that to get that, you have to reduce the weights, otherwise it'd be a 9 or a 10. Yeah.
So I suppose like, if we say get outside like individuals and athletes who have a dialogue with or know their cycle.
Yeah.
If it was a whole gym population of like CrossFit gym, we just have to, depending on the tolerances at the time, we just adapt. Athletes in the class.
Absolutely. So this is why I would like to try and normalise this conversation, because if it's normal to come in and be able to say to the coach in the class, look, I'm really not feeling it today, so I'm just going to do it like, I'll share mine. Like, the other Wednesday, I came in. And it was the week before, and I wasn't feeling absolutely great. And I came in, and it was just mono. And I was just like, and I really didn't like the look of it. And it was like, you had to go pretty hard. And I really wasn't enjoying it. And 2 rounds in, I mentally gave up. And I was like, right, well, I'm going to take 5 minutes. And I came back in and went, go on, Laura, you've got it. And I went, I don't want it. And I just got the rest of the workout done. But that, if it's a normal thing to be able to just say, look, I'm not doing that today, and be like, okay, that's fine, you work with what you've got. If that's a normal conversation that you can have, that is what we should be having. It shouldn't be a taboo subject. It shouldn't be, it should be more of, okay, I feel that you're not getting it, but we'll ramp up the intensity next week. And on the days that they come in and they're on fire, give them hell. Really push them. But on the days when they're not feeling it, don't push them. Just go do it. Yeah. Anybody else?
I've got one. So, basal temperature tracking.
Yeah.
Does it still have any predictions or relevance to perimenopause?
100%. Yes. Yes. Because you're more likely to have cycles without, like a non-ovulatory cycle. You may still get the fluctuations where you may still get the peak testosterone, but just not ovulate. So your body temperature will still increase. You will still get slight fluctuations, and it is a good gauge to be like, if you're on the hormonal pill, you can use that as a jumping off point to be able to gauge that, all right, my temperature has spiked for the last 3 days. I'm probably at that point in my cycle, even though my cycle is looking a bit like it's 50 days long. At least I know that that's the midpoint. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Helen?
So basically, you just answered my question. So if I keep measuring my temperature, through measuring my temperature, I will not find out whether I am possibly perimenopause.
No, now, what you might find is it's easier to track the times between ovulations. So if they're getting longer or short, further apart, that'll be easier to identify if you are likely to be in that phase, but you need to be able to track all the other signs and symptoms. So how I managed to figure out that I was perimenopausal was there was loads of random symptoms which I couldn't explain. So like it's doing it now, my fingers will go like yellow and then white, and they will just go numb, and I will feel like numb in the top of my arms. That's a syndrome. Sleep disturbances, hot flushes, night sweats. Sounds fun, right? But you all can't wait. Yeah, so like my list of symptoms before I figured it out, so that I could go to the doctor, was like 25 long. So you've just got to track and write everything down, and eventually, repeatedly, when things show up again and again and again, that's what you'll know. Anybody else? That's the nail on the thing one. No? Oh, yeah.
Just about weak slides, there's quite a lot of information on some of them that I would forget.
Yeah, absolutely. I can share this with you if you send me your email address. Or
If it's alright, I'm going to give you the emails of the team.
yeah, if you just let Pat know if you want it or not, and he can give me the email and I'll forward it on. Yeah. Right. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you all so much for coming and listening to me ramble on and being subjected to my amazing Yorkshire accent for all this time. I am absolutely gasping for a drink, so I'll let you all go.